Good day, everyone. All right, let's get this link shared out, make sure everything is working. Then we'll get started. Hopefully an interesting live stream today. All right, is the audio working okay? Sometimes that's a problem. How's the audio, everyone? All right, great. Well, we'll give everyone a couple minutes to get in here, and then we'll take a look at the charts. There are some trades I'm interested in locally here on Bitcoin, and I will kind of go over the general ideas I have here. Yeah, I definitely did not catch the bottom of this move. I had an idea around 65 to 63K. Didn't really have any ideas at 60K, 59.9 or wherever we bottomed out, depending on the chart. But yeah, I'm kind of on the warpath now because I tried to just chill and long the bottom, and that didn't work. So I have quite a few ideas I'm interested in. But I went to sleep yesterday, woke up a few hours ago, and chatted with Depeche in the Discord, and he kind of had this interesting idea of this being a wave A to the downside, and we're forming a wave B potentially into a wave C down into this region. What I like about it is it overlaps with some other ideas that could be considered potentially bullish. But I was kind of just looking at it locally, and I think it might generate some nice local setups. But the idea here would be, potentially the bottom's not in. We run the lows one more time, maybe come down into the GP of this whole move and tap the lows of this channel. With this move here being our third wave, form our fourth wave, and then maybe get that last fifth wave, completing the wave A, and then trade that back up towards the 100K region, which if we do bottom out into this kind of 55, 57K area here, call it something like this, that puts the big GP right above the 98K high wave 4. That'd be kind of a nice idea to roll up into that high and potentially short that back down into the kind of 45K range. I think regardless of the perspective on the higher time frames, something like this is almost certainly going to be an interesting short trigger if we run this high, reject right into a level like that. So that's a higher time frame idea. But I have quite a few low time frame ideas that I'm interested in. And so we can talk about some of those. But on the lower time frames, I think for an idea like this, and just based on the reaction, we could consider maybe a micro low or a local low is in right now, and look for potentially some ranging / semi-trending setups. And I'm going to go over all of the kind of confluences here on the higher time frames before we get into the lower time frames. But just worth noting that we have this kind of SR level, this SR level, both kind of important higher time frame structures, previous lows. But then we're going to look at some of the local stuff here. And for example, you know, this whole move happened in one big daily candle. We have a daily candle high here, here, and here. And you know what? I have one of these marked out in my folder, but I'm going to just put this one on here too. And this one, because they're kind of a part of my lower time frame trading plan. So let's remove the Elliott Wave count for a second. And I'm going to get into my lower time frame thoughts. Go to the 15-minute chart. So, as I said, you know, I basically tapped out yesterday. I kind of had a feeling that the low was probably in, and I'd missed it. And that's kind of what I was trading towards. You know, when I was looking for these longs in the 65, 63K region to kind of catch that flush and, you know, catch the big bounce. Because although you're not necessarily expecting price to go straight up to all-time highs necessarily off this low, you can get some ranging, some higher lows. You could retest the low. You're definitely not surprised to see a big bounce off a move like that, right? But, you know, that could move could end here, it could end here, it could end here. And I took my stab at kind of catching the bottom there and didn't quite work. But anyway, so I tapped out last night, woke up today, and was looking at some of this lower time frame structure based off of that Elliott Wave count that Tepeshi had shared, and kind of thinking, well, there's probably a good chance the wave 5 isn't done yet, which would be quite nice to come and tag this low one more time. But if the wave 3 is done, then maybe start looking for some corrective structures here. Maybe something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll kind of explain the types of confluences I would look at when I'm looking to trade something like that. It will get a little messy, but I'll clean it up. But yeah, this morning even in the Discord, I was kind of taking an initial look and thought, well, I'm definitely going to trade some kind of retracement into the local lows. But, you know, even taking another look after I'd been up for an hour or so, I even thought probably reasonable just to long this grinding structure. So we've impulsed a little bit from there. Looking at this as a wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then maybe get a retracement down to this kind of 66K zone. So, you know, I will, if you're a member in the Discord, obviously, I will be updating all of this as we go, but I'm going to go over some of the stuff and my thoughts on the live stream, on the chart here, the types of trades I'm interested in locally, but obviously I'll be updating that in the Discord as well. All right. So the reason there's so many lines on here is I just stuck the whole kind of trading plan into one folder. And I am going to take this off the chart, but I'm going to leave the Elliott Wave count on for now. So, you know, this was this morning kind of thinking it's probably reasonable just to long into this grinding structure because somewhat likely that this wave 1, 2 is protected. Maybe get a little long off into what could be a wave 3. There's kind of two major ideas here that I'm looking at, but they both revolve around an impulse a little bit higher, either into this GP region, and I could even re-pull some of this stuff. But the idea being impulse up through potentially, I kind of like this daily high, and I'll probably look to scalp short that back down into a low here. And I kind of put some annotations together just to kind of explain the levels for the Discord. But looking for an impulse up for a wave 3, shorting into a wave 4, and if we reject from this region, I kind of prefer the daily high. We sort of come down, back down, and we take this New York Open low that we just made. So I'm going to carry this long up through these highs here, and then look to short any weakness back into a wave 4. And I'm going to be doing a lot of scalping here, trading this quite aggressively. Like I said, I'm on the warpath because I tried to just chill along the bottom. It didn't work, so I guess I got to go, as some would call it, full schizo mode. But anyways, I quite like this. So let me break this down. I'm going to remove some of this. So we can impulse up for a wave 3. This is creating the wave A in our subwave 4, potentially. So looking for 5 waves to the upside. I quite like this idea of front running these highs at 79K for our wave A, which would be tagging this daily high that I marked out earlier. And of course, I have things I look for triggers to take the trade. So I would look for a sign of weakness there before I take it. But these are the levels that I'm looking to trade. I think this one, you got to be a little bit careful shorting what could be a wave 3 here. But I probably just prefer running up into the daily high here around 73,400 and then looking to short some weakness. But like I said, if we reject from there, I'd be targeting down into the GP of the wave 1 or 2 through 3, which would be coming into this kind of local low region from the New York Open. And trading that back up into this next daily high for our wave A and shorting that back down through this low that we've put in. And really what I'm looking at here is I'm just looking to trade. Like, we could even remove all of the Elliott Wave stuff here and say that I'm looking to trade kind of ranging, trending structure. So on the local time frames, it kind of looks like trending structure. On the lower time frames, it looks like ranging structure. So let me just remove some of this to clean up the chart a little bit. We don't necessarily need to think so much about where exactly the highs and lows will come in. You're kind of hoping, if you're looking for these types of setups, to identify some weakness around the high or some strength around the lows and put on the risk. But in essence, what we're looking at is an impulse to create a local high, a retracement to create a local low. Whether or not, like I said, I'm going to be trading aggressively. So I'm going to be looking to catch those local highs and local lows. But let's just say you didn't and you waited for that structure to form. Well, then the next setup is actually just price running up through those highs again. For me, again, trading that kind of aggressively, looking to catch the next higher high. But then the long setup is just taking this low, right? So we're looking for a low to form. And I'm going, as I said, kind of schizo mode to find where that high might come in or identify where it might come in and that low. But after we've established a low, and we'll see what actually happens, I'd be looking to trade a run of that low, looking for a sign of strength, and long that back up through into these highs. And I'd identified earlier these SR levels. So we have this one here, and we have that other one that I marked out, which are sort of secondary resistance. This is sort of a region for this first short. And then this last short, which I would look to take, would be such a messy chart. Hopefully I'm explaining it well enough so it kind of makes sense to you guys. Would be taking this high. We have that kind of SR flip here. There is a GP right above that should be considered as well. But I kind of like just, any kind of rejection in this region, because what it does is it leaves a high here, we run this low maybe in the future. And then, you know, as we come back up into something like this, we've now essentially formed a range, right? It just ends up looking quite clean. If we remove everything here, quite clean with quite nice technical levels. Ending up with something that looks a lot like a range here. And, you know, if we are moving up towards the 100K level up here after taking this low, you maybe get a retracement back down towards the middle of the range and an impulse up out of the range. And so in the end, this looks about like the kind of price action you'd actually expect to see off a low. Some choppy, impulsy, rangy behavior. Ideally, in this case, take the low because I think it looks a lot cleaner for the 5 waves to the downside. It does seem, if this is as Tepeshi's chart kind of, he had this wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drawn out. Currently, he has 5 coming in here, but it does seem, if this is the case, that we're missing potentially our wave 3, 4, 5. So and I have noted in the order flow today, take a quick look at that. As we've been grinding into this uptrend, we did form a bullish divergence here. This is when I was sleeping on Binance. And although we've had a decent amount of aggression coming in at the highs, we've also just seen every minor pullback, a lot of aggressive selling, some aggressive shorting, impulsing, really aggressive selling into every pullback, right? 82 million negative delta. So people are kind of longing, selling off, longing, selling off. And that's quite a compelling characteristic for a grinding uptrend, right? It's just, you see that kind of aggressive buying, aggressive selling, aggressive buying, aggressive selling on just all the miny, choppy pullbacks. So anyways, we'll see if that continues. I don't really have too much of a interest in getting into any of this lower time frame trending stuff beyond that long I already took. So it may be, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that this potential short setup presents itself during the live stream. It'd be kind of unlikely in a way if it doesn't. And I could kind of explain the sort of things I would be looking at as to whether or not I'm going to take it. There is a trend line here. I think I pulled it out of one of my folders that aligns exactly with this local GP. I'm just re-pulling it. It's in that folder, but I'm just pulling from this high to this low. I'll probably re-pull almost everything just so you guys can see how I'm pulling it. I'm pulling from this high to this low. And the other level I have marked out as a potential future GP is from the wave 2. I'm calling this a wave 2 locally. Go on the low time frames. Something like a running flat, wave 2 to our hypothetical future wave 3 high, which is the next long I would look to take. So anyways, if we impulse a little bit more up through this local high, we're going to tag the 618 right into the trend line. I don't love taking that short without taking that daily high. But that's right around here at 73,300. But I may have to just trade it maybe a little wider. We'll see what happens up here. But right now the plan is essentially to short some weakness out of here, maybe a little higher, and look to long back down into today's New York Open later tonight or tomorrow. Be interesting to see what order flow looks like up here. Let me just make sure I have this daily high marked out correctly. What I'll probably do is I might not look to short this first touch very aggressively. And if there's kind of continued weakness here, maybe something like trap longs on a little lower high here, and just fire that off. But the reason I don't necessarily like this level for the aggressive short, even though it is quite clean technically, and wouldn't mind just a little higher into something like this, is it just looks a little stubby for this wave 3 to come in here and almost lacks a little bit of structure. Maybe even just some kind of pullback like this would actually look a little bit nicer now that I'm looking at this. We'll see though. We're about to test it. Order flow could be interesting. I also have to decide if I'm going to close my long up here. So let's I mean, just because of how clean this trending structure is right into this GP with this local high here, it's kind of hard not to just short a rejection there. I mean, even if you put on a little bit of risk and just cut it if price does start impulsing higher. But yeah, we're going to get on the lower time frames here. Obviously, there's no reason to short, and the decision might be very easy if price just goes straight up through the level, right? And you get something like that, I would probably short that aggressively. Always using risk management. I'll also be looking I'm going to be closing my long aggressively as well. I'm going to be looking to take a lot of lower time frame setups over the next week. Hopefully dial it in what is ideally an ensuing range here. Lots of aggression coming in. Wonder if it's better. You guys all have charts. Just to look at the order flow. Actually, let me put the order flow over on this screen. So here on Binance, or this is Bybit, this is Binance. You see left is Bybit, right is Binance. Decreasing open interest, 38 million positive delta here, 20 million positive delta here, but the red candles are decreasing open interest, so primarily positions closing. Those are shorts closing. There's been quite a decent amount of aggressive shorting on this grind up, so not surprised to see a short squeeze here. But here on Binance, this is a lot of risk coming on, right? Longs opening aggressively. We like to see these big high volume, high delta candles coming in at the highs to potentially short. We want longs trapped up here. But I will require, I'm not going to just short because there's a high delta candle. We have some levels above. We would need some weakness. For example, if I'm looking at this, I'm not necessarily just looking to short because a big high volume, high delta candle came in. It can be some confluence, but I want to see some important structure hit. And in this case, we have essentially a straight up uptrend, right? So, you want to be aware. You can visualize it for the most part if price is going straight up. But let's just say, for example, this kind of happens, this happens, and the level gets tapped. You might not say, oh, I'm going to short right there. You might want to see some weakness before you short, at least something. See, this happens sometimes on XO here. So this is mostly a short squeeze that came in here on both Bybit and Binance. You have decreasing open interest. So this is just shorts mostly getting stopped out here. And I'm referring to the discrepancy in the delta, obviously. You can see some of that same characteristics that we've had in the uptrend so far, which is here on Bybit, it's more apparent, but you have the aggression coming at the high. It's the first pullback, lots of aggressive selling. In this case, you had some aggression on the long side, obviously. It's not like this is only shorts, but this first reaction, we're seeing a lot of aggressive selling coming in again on Bybit. I'm not shorting it, but we'll see if we can just keep grinding higher. Maybe run one of these little local lows. It would be characteristic of the live stream curse if we just end up doing something like this for 3 hours. But I'm kind of hoping we can just finish off an impulse into here. The reason I'm not shorting this is because it doesn't really fit into, like we have several really nice levels right above us. Price is grinding into an uptrend. Like you could say that, you know, you're structuring a short around this little local high. But if price just does this, I'm just going to miss the short. You know, if something really bearish looking started happening here and we front ran this level, you could maybe chase it, but price is still in an uptrend. You know, I think chasing little pullbacks like this for shorts is just a good way to get wrecked by an uptrend. Like even something like this just looks so much more appealing after you've tapped some of the major technical levels. You have the downtrend there. I really wouldn't mind just running this downtrend into this daily high though. That'd be a short I would take with a lot more confidence to trade it tighter. You know, you can't be so confident that if you trade something like this, that you're going to be staying in that trade with that daily high right above. Also, with the kind of trappy nature of a big trend line breakout, it's kind of a nice, like these higher time frame trending breakouts, kind of a nice trap for a big sharp pullback here. And we can go into, you know, the types of uptrends that we get, right? Or downtrends. But, you know, looking to trade some of these sharp pullbacks long potentially. I'd have to do a lot more work to find something super analogous here. You know, if it's a major low, this is one thing that's, you know, if you go to the 1 hour chart here, if it's a major low, like you have this kind of sharp downtrend, you have an impulse, you maybe get that one sharp correction impulse, lots of grinding, something like this, one kind of minor correction here, and just kind of grinds to a major high. That's probably a 25% move. No, it's a 10% move. Oh, I thought we were in this range. But yeah, don't necessarily get too many deep, sharp pullbacks. So that's one of the reasons why I'm looking to trade one of the first sharp corrections off of this. I think there's some nice local confluence for targeting the local highs. And I'm not opposed to just getting in on the first sharp correction, TP up at a new high. Because let's just go with the scenario where the lows are in here. You know, maybe we grind up, we get some kind of pullback, one sharp correction, something like this. I'm looking to long. And let's just say you TP at some weakness up at these next daily highs. And maybe some kind of uptrending structure holds up and we just start impulsing through this. Well, even though you've locked in some profits here, you can put something on as a breakout if you would like to, put some of those profits at risk as a new trade, right? So even if I think in this case that retesting these lows, let's just say I think it's very likely. I'm not necessarily quite there, but I do like the ideas. I can put myself in a good position by trading some of this local stuff. A good position financially and a good position emotionally to have captured some of the value out of some of this chopping, ranging price action if it comes. And if price breaks up out of these highs and looks quite strong, I haven't just been sitting here waiting for a new low. I've captured some profits off of this price action, and it just kind of makes it a little bit easier to adjust your bias if something else starts happening, instead of you're sitting here waiting and now you're having to just long the top here, right? If you've won a few trades in here, it's a little bit easier just to shift your bias and put on the long trade, and price carries higher. And I would even go further to say that I don't necessarily think I would even classify my view here as a bias, so much as just identifying relevant structure here. I mean, we have horizontal daily highs, we have some fib retracements. These highs look quite targetable. We're kind of looking to maybe catch some of the people who are longing into this region for these highs for a big breakout. Offside, short that into maybe a higher low, long that into a new high, maybe chop around here a little bit more. But just trading all of the levels on the chart if we get a reason to do it. And just let the levels decide. If price just breaks up out of here, then just let price carry higher. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who, it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I almost, it's tough because on one hand, this is like my favorite setup, just structurally, just the perfect GP tap, you know, a little local high here right into the 618 and the trend line. But I sure would love to see something like this and like an egregious amount of longs here. Just a little fake out of that level. But technically, it's quite hard to ignore a rejection from here. There was quite a lot of this. This wasn't quite a perfect trend line touch, but we had this nice, kind of a similar idea in this whole downtrend. This is one of the, am I even on the right screen? This is one of the shorts I took yesterday, but just this move through the local high, but I closed it quite aggressively. I'd mentioned that I should have left that open just as a hedge, because I was pretty much willing to try to snag the bottom with my long setup. And it would have been nice to have had that short running and not just treat it as a local setup, because this was obviously just an incredible downtrend where nothing held up. I might even put on something like half my position if something really bearish happens here. I don't know. We'll see. I'm kind of just hoping I don't even have to make a decision here. And we just blast through this, through the daily high. And then I can just short that. But if I must make a decision, I will. You don't want to get into a big habit of shorting this grinding structure. It is one of the reasons why I decided just to put on the long. The Elliott Wave idea was a big part of it, but just, you know what, we're impulsing and grinding into the New York Open. These lows are probably safe, more likely, more often than not. And we've seen a lot of shorting into this whole move up. So anyways, if price still looks like this, don't really want to short that aggressively. At least get some kind of rollover there, but I kind of like to just see something like this end in an impulse. As for alts, I mean, I feel, like I said, I mean, in some ways it's kind of disappointing because it's just a complete miss yesterday. Like, I mean, you kind of have to think, like, I'm not just going to start, I took that long on Bitcoin. I'm not going to just start yeeting everything here. As far as alts go, I'm probably just going to trade the alts along some of the higher time frame or medium time frame structure that forms on Bitcoin. So, if we get something like this type of structure, and I'm shorting something like this on Bitcoin and longing something like this, I'll probably just stick with Bitcoin on this lower time frame. But maybe something like this where we're coming and running this low, the established low on Bitcoin, if we get something like that, I'm going to look to put on some trades on alts with setups like that. And I'll probably look to put on some setups on alts around these highs if I'm shorting that. And I'll almost certainly be looking to swing long alts if we come and run this low. And from a timing perspective, this isn't tomorrow. We'd be looking for something like 2 weeks from now. So kind of think of choppy sideways price action for 2 weeks. Probably has more of the look of a trending price action up until if and when price nukes, with kind of consecutive new highs. If we run this low, you could call that still a higher low from here, right? And this would be a higher high. So it would have kind of a trending look on one hand and a ranging look on another. My gut is telling me just not to short this. I feel like this is just such a better idea to wait for this, but wait for that daily high to come. Like I said, it might not even have to be a decision because price could just rip through that. But if there's any weakness here, like let's just say we impulse, because I do have a long from lower, I'm going to close my long aggressively. I'm going to take the short. I'm just looking to capture these moves. If I get, stopped out of my short or price pulls back and then just rips through the high, then so be it, right? Lots of other levels to trade above. I'm full. I just saw this question. I'm assuming, I don't know if you're talking about the long or the short. I'm just going to be full closing everything here. I just don't have a lot of interest. This probably just comes back to bite me, especially if, it'd be funny if this just happens. But because it's just a rejection from the trend and then we just go straight down. But after this huge wipe yesterday, I don't have a lot of interest in holding shorts off this low for a new low. I'd rather just capture something here and really would only be interested in holding the shorts for the new low after some structure and ranging builds up here. Because I would say probably what most traders at some point over the next 2 weeks, if we do something that looks like sideways or slightly uptrend ranging price action, put in something that looks like a higher low, a pretty clean higher low, people are going to be long off of that low with stops below here, stops below here. So, shorting into that looks quite appealing if we get for a new low. But right now, it does not look very appealing to try to leave some of the local short setups open for a new low. Just a big ping off of like a massive wipeout. Liquidations. Audio's not working. I don't know. Some people are saying audio's fine. Some people are saying it's not working. I'm assuming it's working. But like I said, there's scenarios too where, just to make it kind of easy, we know the GP's here. I'm just going to delete it. I just got to clean up, some of this. But say you get into a long like this, which looks come up a little higher through that daily high. Looks something like this. We take a future low. There's some chance that there's something here where you just end up trailing your TP and carrying it higher, right? And maybe just taking the head short or the short as a separate trade. The long trails out and the short continues. So probably a trade like that. I wouldn't necessarily just try to close the Pico top. I want to put myself in a good position, you know, if this does happen, and either I can have a long that I held on because I trailed it, or I just get back long if something really bullish happens, where I've captured most of this move anyways. I'm kind of in or out right around or back in right where I got out. I've been just too bit in the ass by kind of just sitting and waiting, trying to chill and catch the bottom here, because I did not catch the bottom. And so I'm willing to kind of mix it up more, especially because these are pretty big moves, right? I think this is 5, 6, 7%. There's a lot of value to potentially capture here. And even though I quite like the idea of running this low, I'd rather mix it up. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting trades to take in here than just wait for this low. And especially if that low doesn't come, then you're kind of like, whoa, why the hell wasn't I longing any of this? I mean, I'm never going to really be in that situation, but just saying, for as much as I have a basic plan here of trading some of this as a range, I'm completely willing to shift my perspective if there's just major strength up out of here. This actually, you know, this is just worth noting too. I kind of just want to remove everything off of the chart because I know it's getting quite messy. But this might be a nice little timing confluence with the future wave. See, like tag the edge of the GP there right into the downtrend. So I think the big trades would look something like this. I mean, just kind of long anything that looks longable down here. And I mean, this would be a nice little local setup, even though the quote unquote bias would be towards higher from this point. You'd be looking for something that looks like an A, B, C to create this wave towards 100K. I don't know. I think there's going to be some really clean, easy setups to trade here. But what could happen is something completely different. I can't see not capturing a lot of value out of this, but I mean, you know, if this happens, I mean, really no matter what happens, I think I'm going to be well positioned and certainly not getting wrecked. Like worst case scenario, I give up the win that I just made on this long. I take a short, and if price just rips and breaks out, well, and I don't take a long, let's say, then I'm just break even on this kind of whole plan. But I'd like to do better than that. Let's take a look at order flow here. Yeah, like I said, you know, I'm not shorting this at this point. So if we just reject here, then that's fine. Really invalidation for a long here. If you're calling this, you know, something like a wave 4, well, price can't come below the top of wave 1, right? So that'd be like hard invalidation from an Elliott Wave perspective. But this doesn't look like a very important low, just structurally on the 15-minute chart. But I think it's quite a nice low, considering, you know, we have this big impulse, the New York Open, and then a big grinding uptrend. I think it's quite a nice low to target. Maybe not something you would, if you weren't really thinking about all the context here, you'd necessarily mark out as super important. But given all this price action that's followed it, I think it's quite a nice confluence for a long setup. Just coming in, just tagging that low. And like I said, if we push up to the highs, and this is something like the count that we're in locally, you could justify, you know, calling this a local GP. I mean, we could try to go, you know, it's like, what are we counting? 1, 2, 3, 4. No, no, you're probably counting it more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is not how I recommend doing Elliott Wave counts. Probably do need a wave 4 here. Anyways. 1, 2. You have to have a little series of 1, 2s, 1, 2s, 3, 4. I mean, there's probably 2 series of them, but something like that. You know, call this a wave 4. We'll see. But there's looking like there's going to be some kind of correction here. I don't care about the degrees here. We'll just put that back. I was considering longing the first pullback here, but one of the problems is that there's, I don't really want to count this, but there is ideas of coming and running this low as well, which I wouldn't mind tightening up my long setup if I got something like that potentially, but probably could consider, depending on what this looks like, a long into the uptrend. Because I have a long on, but it's quite a wide setup. Something like that. So yeah, I would say like even this correction, it definitely is decent. It's probably was scalpable there. It kind of became obvious at some point that we're going to get a correction here, but I still would be looking for higher for a short setup. The question is, I guess, where this low comes in. It's a decent little wipe there. Big volume, big delta. If I see a local setup that I think looks interesting, it's not going to be off of this first low. Then I'll point that out. But like I wouldn't just long right now personally. See what happens at these lows. You'd be looking for something out of here maybe. May as well just do some 15-second charting. See if we get some kind of channel in looking thing. Because what you're kind of expecting to see here, I mean, if you just kind of guess based on how these traders have been behaving, you could even call this a bullish divergence on Bybit. but you know, the buying aggression comes in. We stopped out a lot of shorts, obviously. Then a bunch of selling aggression comes in here. 65 million delta. You maybe start putting in a local low, price pushes up, and people start chasing back in for a new high because they've just closed their longs. And then maybe you come back down and run those again. They sell back into the low, and then, you know, maybe you push up again. But, and that might be also where people are more willing to, like, you might see the order flow behavior shifting a little bit, where people are more willing to give up on longs because now they've put in a lower high and a lower low. And so they get wiped out here and they don't long into this. And then we break out and they long into that. And that kind of creates the trap, something like that. But I'm just kind of talking because there's, you know, we're sitting here waiting. But that's what I would expect to see here, right? If we got some kind of like A, B, C correction, something like a channel. Just saw a lot of longs closing. Wouldn't be so surprised to see them chase back in, get stopped out, and then not really like chasing anything here until there's a big impulse, and they might chase into that. Ideally, short that and win, or something else could happen. I don't really have a huge bias towards a zigzag. I'm kind of just trying to create a bit of a narrative to trade around that I think aligns well with the structure that's here, right? Like, if it's, for me, this kind of looks like it has room to move. Or do you mean a zigzag? Which zigzag are you referring to? I know there's a couple zigzags in all of this, but like, are you talking about the macro one? Or are you just talking about this zigzag, like on the 15-second chart? Yeah, you're talking about this one. I don't know. I don't really have too much of a bias, but, you know, we front run this low, see a bunch of selling. We'll see if people chase back in. You know, this is a nice little local trap. Come run the lows. It looks like a channel. We'll see what happens. Have your 618 from this impulse right below there. But I'm not opening a trade here anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But, you know, probably something like this, something I would scalp if it all played out like this. For another leg up and it all looks good. I think it's starting to look quite good. Obviously, we don't have anything. We don't have a channel here. We have one touch, one touch. You could use this center line as some sort of indication that this is the, you know, trend angle. But it's a little speculative. Like, sometimes you see the angle sort of playing I don't know if we do here, but playing like these highs are on that angle. These ones are not quite there, but these highs are on the angle. These lows are on the angle. So everything's kind of moving between on the same trending angle. So, you know, a high here would be on that same trending angle against the major high. A low here would be on that same angle. It's kind of like hidden channels. I've made some content on this kind of idea before, but like to kind of speculate what the trending kind of channeling angle might be. You can just duplicate some of these and find that same angle presenting itself over and over again. Do I think whales study retail tactics in order to anticipate what they will do / where the liquidity will be? And where's the whale manual? Well, it's hard to call it tactics, really. I mean, if you think about, I don't know, you just think about the reason why most people make trading decisions. If you kind of want to call that retail, like emotional trading decisions, it's sort of like, let's just say, you know, I'm in this long here, right? Targeting these highs. I might obviously just round trip this, but if I'm looking at this on the low time frame, you know, you see a lot of people who are longing, selling aggressively into this. Like you're kind of seeing this over and over again. They're longing this, selling this, you know, longing, selling, longing, selling, longing, selling. And if you kind of want to say like, you know, what are their tactics here? Well, their tactics are to basically long every time price makes a new high and then sell at a loss every time it goes down a little bit. And they're kind of repeating that tactic over and over again. So, you know, I would say don't do that. That'd be that. I don't think you'd really have to study it to understand what is happening there. But like if I'm looking at this, you know, I'm probably eyeing longs off of something nice here. I think longing here for this lower high is quite speculative. Like if I had to do it, I would probably okay, by the way, I'm not taking this trade, but I could maybe come up with kind of what exactly I'd have to see to take the long and how I would structure it. But anyways, I just don't want to be doing this. Let me go to it. In this situation, I don't want to be buying the high, selling the low. Buying the high, selling the low. Buying the high, selling the lows. Although these lows just got completely absorbed. But you kind of just see the same thing, right? 9 million delta at the highs. 13 million delta at the lows. And just people kind of trying to catch the big impulse and closing on every minor pullback. Yeah. Like I said, I wouldn't long for this. I mean, if you, there's certain things you would maybe maybe consider longing if they happen, but none of those things are happening now. It's not that we can't just bounce up to that high, but there's no reason to long. Could even end up with something like that. That wouldn't look too bad. Let's see what happens taking this low. I mean, that's kind of a little bit of a scalp setup there. And you fire it like if you're on roll bit, and you just say, okay, bounce, or I'm just going to cut immediately. You can trade without fees. But it's kind of tough to trade something like that super tight if you have trading fees, right? Because can't really justify just cutting it, and it's not quite enough of a reaction to get like swing long or something. It'd be kind of nice if this holds up as something that looks like a channel, but we're about to lose that kind of option. GP is right here. Still bounce. May as well get rid of this. And like I said, I'm not gonna close this. Even if we come back into these lows, but I might tighten up a long setup if I get something that looks like a nice local low. Still something like that would look okay. Probably don't even really want to come up that. Yeah. You know, probably If we start forming a bunch of lows around here and impulsing up to them, and we do just get a quick sell off into this trend line into a bunch of lows, I'll probably long that for one last impulse. We just kind of chop sideways here. But I don't have to make that decision now. Just wait and see what happens. Decent selling into these lows. It would be funny if we just reject here straight to new lows. All my hard work. Chart ETH. Yeah. It's funny. Just never bearish enough, I guess. I thought ETH was kind of the really nice kind of swing short idea, rejecting off of this major high. And obviously, you know, there was quite a nice fifth wave count up into this high. And I put quite a lot of effort into shorting into here. But but when I said, you know, my targets were sub 3K, you know, obviously everyone's like, you're insane. That's never going to happen. My targets were down here, which is obviously a big pullback. But, you know, I should note that whenever I'm super bearish like that, then and I'm getting comments like I was getting, I'm probably not bearish enough. Same thing happened here. I was really bearish into at these highs. I like bearish ideas into like this look quite nice. We did ping really cleanly off of this kind of uptrend idea. Just come back and retest these lows. That was same thing. And was like, that's never going to happen. Not only did that happen, we just nuked down to 1400. So maybe that's a signal. Not bearish enough. But this is true for obviously everything right now. But man, the ETH guys, because people were bull posting like crazy on ETH at these highs. Pretty big disappointment, I think, for a lot of people in ETH. You know, like I said, as far as alts go, and I can't even say that I'm super interested in ETH being on that list. I'm going to wait for some of this structure to form on Bitcoin that I talked about. And when some of the more medium time frame, higher time frame setups come into play on Bitcoin, I'm going to look to set up some stuff on alts. But I can't say that ETH would be my first choice. Like you almost have to think just at a glance, like it is always nice to look at just naked charts. You almost have to think that this $860 low is coming, right? Like at least that needs to be on the table. Like, where else is price going? You're just going to bounce here. So let's just say, you know, let's say that the Bitcoin idea played out. I'm just going to kind of draw it roughly here. We range a bit. Maybe we get an impulse into this high. It'd be quite a nice looking short setup on ETH, really. I mean, can you not take that? Probably going to trade that. You know, while we make a new low on Bitcoin. Well, yeah. I mean, if we ran like to 55K on Bitcoin, I'm just speculating here, obviously. If we ran to 55K on Bitcoin, then you got to think that even just tagging this low is on the table. I'm just putting myself in the mindset. If I, you know, I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but if I had to trade ETH here, I'm just trying to kind of think what the parallel would be. Like it would be something like that, right? If let's just, if that kind of ABC, Depeche also had an idea where this is, you know, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we go to negative. No, but it's as a 5-wave count too. I don't think we have to really worry about that for now. But if you had something like this, you run down into this kind of 53, 55K region, bounce up to 100K, and then get a move down to, you know, 40 some K, 45K, then that probably makes running this low locally on ETH pretty reasonable. Short this high into the GP, back down to $870. Because if we hit 45K on Bitcoin, you know, where's ETH going? Probably through that low. And you could say it's impossible, but is it really so far away? And if we do this, got an account from X-Force Global here too. Can follow him on X. I just threw his count on my chart as well. That's an alternate idea. Because his idea, which is one of the more bullish ideas, would be that we rally off this low. So we hold it. And, you know, he's has a target around 163K, which is one of the reasons why I want to be open to longs without taking this low, get myself positioned for some of those bullish scenarios. If we just start ranging here, put in a higher low, you know, maybe push up to here, finish this, and then it gets quite bearish from there. If this is a wave one, this is on log scale. But I think even if this is the case, I can play some of this internal stuff similarly anyways. So there's X-Force's count. So you know, ETH is kind of like breaking out of this downtrend, you could say. So what, parallel something like this, maybe even run that low again on ETH. When Bitcoin puts in the higher low setup, you know, maybe ETH could even run that low, push up to these highs. I mean, probably ETH might be the play for the short side. You could make that argument, or might be worth looking at. Maybe I'll spend some time over the weekend thinking about that. ETH might be the play for the short side instead of Bitcoin, or you could just short both, but looking something like that. Obviously not straight up and down. Because, I mean, here's the thing. There's not really any point in talking, you can talk about these levels. You can talk about shorting 2,500, 2,600, some weakness there around these highs. You could talk about targeting 1,400 or targeting this low or longing these lows. As far as talking about what's going to happen, I mean, really all you can do is identify at this point nice levels. I mean, something like this could offer an interesting short. A long off this low would look pretty interesting. And you could say, well, do you really think we're going to get there, or do you really think we're going to get here? Well, at some point we're going to get here or here, unless ETH just goes sideways forever. That's unlikely. And then, you maybe put on the long or you put on the short. Either put on the long, put on the short, and price either breaks out or it doesn't. And you just change your perspective, right? I mean, my perspective on ETH would change a lot if there was just a ton of strength. But right now, it almost looks the most likely that we find our way down into these lows around $850. I mean, it's hard to say that's not the most likely, but I haven't spent that much time looking at the chart other than just zooming out and looking at it. It would be really nice to get something like this on Bitcoin and ETH. I would not complain. And alts, and just if the market behaves something like this. Go back over to Bitcoin, because kind of getting that bounce off the local lows. Maybe we put in that lower high, come back down for another test of the lows. But this is where, I mean, I'm just telling you what I would or wouldn't do. I'm not saying what would happen, but I wouldn't long this as a trend continuation setup, like as a tight stop. I am holding my long from lower, but like I wouldn't do something like this personally. It may hold. I'm not saying that it won't. Obviously, we could just keep trending. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think this is more likely, probably need some kind of correction in here. More likely to find people chasing into something like this, getting wiped out again before a move to the upside. I don't think it's very likely that longs like this hold up. And I don't think it's very interesting to trade along like this. If I saw something really compelling into this, another retest of these lows that kind of had more of a completed corrective structure, then I would I'd be more open to scalping along there. And, you know, we can kind of look at the order flow here, but this also could be scalp shortable as well. Probably, no, you'd have to be considering a lower high. But a flat also could be the play. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd short the lower high. Something like this could be interesting. I'm just trying to think about some like local scalp setups. You know, this is a potentially a pretty big range. It's almost 3%. And there's probably some setups worth poking at in here. Along the lows later today, maybe. But let's take a look at the order flow, because it's sort of the behavior that you're not so surprised to start seeing to be kind of trappy locally here. Is you have a lot of longs closing at the lows, and now longs starting to chase in quite aggressively on this move up. And you could assume that some percentage of these are just the same traders, right? Some are going to be people who were long from lower and held, and then you have this kind of what looks like a big bullish divergence here on Bybit at least. Just zoom in on that. Some held, some longed up at the highs. This pullback spooked them out, so they closed, but then they see price bouncing, and they probably look at the chart and they say, I mean, this is still technically an uptrend. You know, do I really want to close into this? And they start reopening their positions. So some, you know, but some of those will be people who long the highs, close at a loss. Some will be that people that closed from lower and just willing to put the risk back on because the uptrend. But this is where, you know, you're not surprised to see people maybe get aggressive up here, get stopped out, and then give up on the trend because it does indeed look like the trend's reversing. In that situation, because you have your lower high, your new low, but ultimately the trend is obviously still holding in this context, and you just get some kind of corrective move here. But probably looks okay as a range here, doesn't it? Like, just take that high, take that low. Or get close enough. And psychologically, it's quite compelling to get really aggressive on longs here, right? Because you're kind of thinking, well, one, what are the chances? Like as price starts coming up to this high, you're thinking, what are the chances we don't at least push up into this high? And I could always cut it if price starts breaking down. So I could get out, you know, if there's any weakness, and maybe there is some chance that it just blasts through the high. Like that's sort of the psychology that gets a bunch of people longing with big leverage or big size into a move like that with a really close stop or liquidation, because it kind of feels like you have a 50-50 chance of making life-changing money. But anyways, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but that would be kind of the idea, right? Price is in a trend. It's like, well, we're looking to make a new high, and what if we just carry this uptrend? They long, they get wiped out, and then price continues. And they either take, you know, a nasty loss, but you could even make the play without over leveraging. But it's the kind of move that psychologically can kind of get someone doing something that they shouldn't. And maybe be able to capitalize on that with a little local short setup into a long setup. And then you just ultimately carry on the uptrend and maybe take some of these levels above. I think this is what's, one thing I would say, whether you're scalping or you're trading any time frame, you don't need, I'm not saying that you can't, by the way, get in here and start trading this. I mean, I do it, but it's not really something I'm comfortable with on a live stream, and you really need to be locked in with your sizing and how you're cutting it. But let's just say, we just take one step back from the time frames here, not the absolute lowest time frames, but you really want to just be setting up kind of a logic and a narrative to your trades, right? Like, what is your plan? Like, when you think about a trading plan, it's like, let's just say, let's just say that you're in this short. Price pushes up to the highs. You have an idea for a short. There's a couple ways to think about this. One would just be, I hope the top is in, and I can short this down to 50K, and you're just kind of hoping that this trend breaks and this is a big fake out and this happens. I think that's just kind of wishful thinking, right? You might get into this kind of setup in some scenarios, but maybe instead you're kind of thinking, well, what are the traders here doing? Why would a short here make any sense at all? And what would be the conditions at which I would take it? And really, what would be the target for this short? The reasonable target would be to target the longs that have opened up into here, back into these lows. If you're short here, what are you kind of worried about? Well, you're kind of worried about this whole uptrend holding, and you're worried about these lows holding and another move up to the highs, because that's where your entry and your stop loss is. So, the narrative here, you could start building a really just simple narrative around why you're shorting, why you're targeting these lows. And if price does just roll over and nukes the lows, then you can hold it. And you start kind of applying that logic to the next levels, right? Well, if you hold it and the short, price starts nuking, what are you kind of worried about? Well, you're kind of worried about maybe some of this SR stuff holding up and, the downtrend kind of breaking up out of here. And so maybe you just close the short. But I think what you're going to get into trouble with if you're trading the low time frames without a reasonable narrative, because you can't really call shorting this as anything but a low time frame setup. Not that it couldn't just turn into a higher time frame, but if you're kind of looking at all this low time frame price action, but then trying to build a high time frame target out of it, without really compelling weakness. And so you might be open to holding if it breaks down, but I'm just hedging the fact that if I do take a scalp short up here and I close it here, and then we do this and we go straight to 30K. So I've already built the logic in. I'm taking profit. But yeah, anyways, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't think, I would say it's hard to say that there's any kind of really strong ideas for holding a short from here. much deeper. And I think it's probably shortable as a scalp. It's a 3% range. I think this is probably longable as well. But you probably also have to be concerned about the range as well. There's nothing wrong with just waiting for some of the structure to form, and in the case of order flow, just for some people to get offside or get wrecked. And it's very aggressive to just kind of trade the low here. It's not that you can't do it, but you know, I don't like trading stuff like this unless I'm like it'd be something I would trade on Rollbit or something where you have no fees and you can just kind of like get in. If it holds, you hold. This, you just cut it. It's a little bit of a crutch. I know people are asking about different alts. I would say that I don't even want to look at any alt charts because it's too depressing. But kind of the same thing as before. I mean, that I said before, I'm just at this point, like someone asked about XRP. Did I miss the bottom? I missed a bottom. Price pumped 30% since yesterday. So, you know, I'm not going to long here, but I'm also not planning on sitting sidelined for the rest of the year, no matter what happens. I'm not so interested in trading this aggressively, although I think, you know, if something like what I'm thinking could happen, although, you know, XRP is a lot stronger than Bitcoin. On Bitcoin happens, then you are kind of looking for something like this, you know, whatever. I think what I'll do is I'd like to just assess the structure on each alt individually when the time comes, because it's very likely on a coin like XRP, the internal structure here will be quite a bit different than Bitcoin's. It could be very different. And so it's kind of hard to set up a trade like that now. But there are some ideas. I didn't actually look too deep into the count, but when I was looking at X-Force's page, I think he had some ideas of this being the low. It's just so, this is just so frustrating to look at, honestly. Just being honest, this is really, really annoying. It's annoying because I actually longed. I made a little bit from it. I actually longed into this. Someone in the but I did close it. But someone in the Discord was just pointing out, Like, let me just show you this. Someone in the Discord was pointing how good XRP looked off this low locally. And I quite agreed. This grinding structure here. And so I took a long out of this grinding structure. And, we got a little impulse, a few percent. And then I just closed it for a small win when there's some profits. And I was considering just reopening if there's some strength off of here. There wasn't. And I just said, I tapped out for the day. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to come back tomorrow. Bitcoin's kind of nuked the region that I was looking at. And I was willing to try. Like I said, I'm willing to try some of these on alts. There's always a chance. And the risk, this looks quite good. It's quite easy to get out of a trade like this for even a small win, or a small loss if it doesn't hold up. This is the 1 minute chart, by the way. And so I'll throw on some longs and I'll just get out, and maybe I'll look at getting in again. So I tap out, we take the low, I sign off for the day. Look at this. It's literally the same thing, except for this time price just goes straight up. It's just frustrating because you tap out, but just so much here that I was already on the charts for probably 14 hours at that point when I tapped out. Then overnight price just grinds straight up 30%. So it's a little frustrating to look at. It's a little frustrating because in hindsight, it's not even hindsight, it's just in reality. It's not like even on XRP here, I took a winning trade, right? I actually won on this trade, but like just to have then gone on to kind of miss all of this with sort of the same idea that just put on the risk. Super easy to get out of a trade like this if there's any weakness. We just end up with really clean trending price action, and then price just goes straight up. You just kind of feel like a huge missed opportunity there. And you're just kind of off by, it's not even that you really made a mistake here. You kind of traded something like that with the same idea as what happened here. It's just by here, you're off the charts. And that idea played out. I don't know. I don't get too frustrated about stuff like that, but it's hard not to be a little frustrated because there's a big difference between a long that looks like this and a long that looks like this. It's all based around the same idea, right? You take the low, start getting something that looks bullish. I was, prudent about cutting that on weakness. But anyways, that's some structure to look at on the low time frames. You have this kind of rounded grinding structure. It can be nice for getting kind of aggressive because you really know when you want to get out. And sometimes it really just holds up for a big move. Yeah. I don't know if there's going to be much more to say about Bitcoin here during this live stream because, I'd say this is sort of even on the lower time frames, just kind of waiting for some structure to develop. Obviously, this could just roll over, but at this point, I don't think it's the most likely scenario. I think there could be interesting setups for short and long trades, you could justify. I'm saying this is for a really experienced trader. You could justify trying to look for longs out of this into the highs. It's not off the table. This is more like you're really experienced. You know what you're doing. You're on the low time frames. You're actually looking at what's happening on the time frame you're entering and trading, and you're kind of building some kind of thesis around a move for either a lower high, because what's really important is you need to be willing to get out of a trade like that into a lower high. Sometimes you can hold it to the highs, and I just wouldn't really feel comfortable, because there's so much execution edge in scalping on this type of time frame. Am I even on the right screen? That when you get out, how you get out, how you size, and the seconds in between them are super important. So, but I know there's a lot of members in the Discord who are interested in scalping or learning about scalping, even lower time frame stuff. You can start to think about how you would maybe build some ideas around this, but you got to be quite, definitely paper trading. There's no reason why you can't be in here gaining experience trading with fake money on these time frames, getting a feel for price action. But, I'm not going to be scalping the 5-second chart on public live stream or setting up ideas that way. But I think we have some potential for a nice little range throughout the rest of the day, and maybe come back down into this trend line. And I will say, you shouldn't be taking any trades that A, you don't understand, B, if you don't have experience as a trader. You should be trading based on your with real money, based on your personal performance. And the best way to do that is to start with paper trading, get a lot of experience, just go mix it up, test out different things. Trading's a game of probabilities. It's a game of risk management. There are endless stories in the Discord, both from paying members and public members, and people who have done a bit of both, where they've made massive progress, and their equity curves are going like this, and they're trading their own, maybe some of it's based off things I teach, but they're just trading their own setups, or largely their own setups. They have a lot of confidence in the market. They've dialed in their risk management, and most of the people who succeeded or are having some success started by doing paper trading or trading with an irrelevant amount of money, building up that experience and that kind of backlog of successful series of trades. And then they just started increasing their size a little bit as they understood what they were doing. But there's no reason to just jump into the market and start ripping off trades with meaningful money when you don't have any experience. And it's free and easy to get experience. You just need some time, and you just sit on the charts and try things out. So I'm a little biased here, and I wouldn't even say it's the best, but there's cool features on it. I mean, I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not familiar with all of the paper trading out there. You can paper trade directly on TradingView, but there's also a paper trading platform, which I should, if you go to the discounts and promotions page in the Discord, myself and a member, he coded everything, built a free paper trading platform called tradingarena.io, tradingarena.io. and you have to link, you know, just for your own comfort, you can link it to a empty new MetaMask wallet. It has to be linked to a MetaMask wallet because there's plans of kind of building in some, you know, reward integrations and stuff in the future. But you can trade there for free, and there's like some journaling stuff and trade tracking features built into it, and it's free to use. A little leaderboard, you can unlock little rewards, not monetary rewards, just sort of like badges and achievements, and you can even earn LATF membership. Just paper trading. But yeah, looking at the chart here, I mean, even so, I'm not saying that it's, you know, that what I think is going to happen, but I think, you know, trading, again, it's not about predicting or knowing what will happen. There's nothing you can ever do that will allow you to know with certainty what's going to happen. But I think there's a reasonable narrative, an idea here for example, why you might not want to sell this low and and maybe even short into this, and why, you know, on the very lowest of time frames you could think about putting some longs together off this low. But I think it's, you know, if I have to tell you how to set that up, then you're probably not ready to be doing that with real money, but certainly with paper trading. But and not that you should be taking any of these trades with real money if you're not experienced. It's just the difference between how you execute the trade and what happens isn't such a big factor as you start increasing the time frames a little bit. But anyways, I think this could start to make sense even from an order flow perspective. We'll see. By the way, it actually should be noted. I should look at order flow here. If we get something like a zigzag, like, I'm just trying to think about this. I mean, technically, you could just make the new low now, right? That's why you have to, you really want to pay attention to what's happening here if you're scalping. Like, you could just end up with something more like this and run that low. So 382, like, you have your something maybe like 5 waves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would have to get in here and count this. That's probably a little speculative. A, B, C. Yeah. Probably, and especially now that this is just nuking low, I mean, on the time frame we're looking at, probably reasonable to think that we could just also just run into this low now, and you have something like this. But my preference here, because just saying, if I was scalping off this low, if I'm scalping, I'm already looking at getting out of that trade when that starts breaking down off that high. It's only 0.5%, but that's kind of what scalping is. And you're just trying to kind of hedge your, lock in some small wins, hedge your risk by taking profits. But yeah, anyways, I would just wait for some of this to play out as the standard play for myself, either at the highs, at the lows, something like this. And I might just take a look at the chat here. I think it's been a good long live stream, covered lots of things. Someone asking basically about the difference between spot and futures, or if I would trade both. You know, for the most part, it just depends where you're trading and kind of how you're managing your positions. But for example, there are some exchanges that I will trade on where I'm just not comfortable putting a ton of money onto those exchanges and just having a big spot position, because they're unregulated. They're you know, there's some benefits to trading on them for sure, but I would rather just use a small amount of money on the exchange and use leverage and just I'm always going to be using some form of invalidation for my setups anyways. And so, you know, as far as, let's just say you have $10,000, to me personally, no matter what you're quote unquote trading, I don't think that just buying spot is necessarily an excuse for not having invalidation. Let's just say, for example, you know, someone up here, they buy spot ETH. They're all in spot ETH. I don't think just holding spot while price runs to $500 is something I would like to do. It goes down 85% and just wait for it to come back. I would always put that on as a trade. So even if I'm using leverage and I'm trading a $10,000 position, I'm going to have an invalidation and a stop loss. If I was in spot, I would still have invalidation and a stop loss, because I don't really see trading it in spot as a placeholder or a replacement for invalidation. But if you're comfortable wherever you're trading to have your funds all locked up in big spot positions, and that's always a possibility. That I would just say that, you know, it's like FTX crashing, all those things. You might be comfortable with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. It's one of those things where it just takes one time for something to go wrong, and over, if you're planning on trading for many years, then those one times come eventually. So, you know, it's kind of a rough way to go out if the exchange you're trading on goes down. And since we're all trading on stuff like Ding Dong, Ping Pong, you know, exchange, and there's a new exchange popping up every day. Have you tried donglebit.com? Run by who knows who. If you're going to use exchanges like that, I think you have to be pretty wary of putting a bunch of money on there at once and not being able to get it out. Like I said, someone asking if I want to look at Doge. I don't want to look at any alts. Now I will be looking at them, but yeah, I will be looking at them, but I'm gonna wait for some structure to form and fire off some alt trades along with Bitcoin when the time comes. Well, the good thing is about not being in this long on XRP is I don't have to worry about taking profits. That's always stressful. Thinking, how much money should I make from this? I don't even have to care. All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Obviously, you know, I'll update some stuff in the Discord. if the setups come. Maybe I'll flash just the basic trading plan on here for myself. The types of levels I'm looking at, I explained why. But basically looking to short some kind of impulse out of here. I prefer this daily high. There's a level at this. You guys can go watch the earlier parts of the live stream if you really want to know. You've got the GP there, got the big trend line there, so probably I like running that daily high, but then maybe look to long, a retest of this level, maybe look to short up here, long down here, short up here. Hopefully some kind of ranging price action. I quite like the idea of running this low one more time, but we'll see what happens here. Like I said, X-Force Global's setup or trading idea looks more like, I'd really have to zoom out, but more like the low is in. And so these would all form as higher lows, and that's always a possibility too. Up to where I'll have to zoom out. I'll just flash that on the higher time frames here. Looking more like that. So hopefully positioned well if we do get that big breakout off this low and are heading towards all-time highs. But even if not, you know, looking for something like a rejection off this high and trading this retracement would work as well. But there's only so much you can do, you know, as of today. And I think I'm doing about as much as I possibly can at this point. I'm planning on trading pretty much every idea and every level. So we'll see what happens. That I can come up with, that I think looks solid, and willing to get involved on some of this lower time frame structure here. Okay, guys, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the live stream. No point in overstaying my welcome here. So appreciate you guys for tuning in, and have a great weekend. Hopefully no one got too wrecked with this big move to the downside. I could have done better, but I also could have done much worse. So we'll see what the week ahead brings.